Hey, we're Saints. Father Chris here. Welcome to our Crucifixion Life. I'm glad to have you with us today on this beautiful day. We have been spending some time this week, Greg and I, answering questions. And yesterday, we got a great question from George R. And the question that he asked was, how do we, choose our friends and how do we develop or build those relationships? And I thought it was a great question. I thought lots of questions came in and they were good. There was even one about the book of Sirach, which we might get to if time permits. But this one was particularly interesting to me and, as a fellow human being, but also thinking in terms of not just young people, like high school and younger as they grow, but also for us as adults, because we all know there are those relationships that we have that really, are they giving us what we need? Are they helping us become better people? And sometimes we see that those relationships are not, and we tend to stick with them because of obligation or because of guilt or because we are really more concerned with others, what others will say about us if we move on from those relationships and so on. I'm going to share with you a real story. There was a relationship that I had. I've spoken of it before. I was very close with the person, but just toxic individual, and not a lot of good things were coming out of the relationship. Initially they did, and then it started to be really not so good. And I realized I love the person, just don't like the person. And the relationship is doing more harm than good. And so, the relationship ended, not without some fallout for sure. But it was how do I even say it? It was an immediate uplift when the relationship cooled down because I wasn't surrounded with it all the time. Kind of like this. You may have heard me use this metaphor before, like when you have a sponge and you place it in a bucket of water, that sponge has no choice, no option but to absorb the water that it's in. I mean, that's what it does. And likewise, our mind, our emotions, our thoughts, our thought processes are absolutely like that sponge. And when we place them in the water of the relationships that we have, we're going to absorb. So what that says then is, all right, George, let's answer your question, baby. How do you choose them? Well, I think we're going to do two things today. We're going to talk about one thing that you should avoid and one thing you should chase. And let's begin with the avoidance. And, we all have said this as parents to our children. We've all, as children, had our parents say it to us. You are who you surround yourself with. And so what did we call it, Greg? Stay away from
wrong people.
Stay away from the wrong people. And like the jargon du jour is toxicity. Stay away from toxic people. And yes, that's for real. You don't want to be if the people you surround yourself with and the relationships that you're cultivating are the water in your bucket and you're the sponge, don't put dirty water in there, right? It just doesn't make any sense because it will affect you and you will absorb that. Listen to what the book of Proverbs, and then we're going to hear from Ephesians, have to say. In the book of Proverbs, chapter 20, I love this. He who goes about gossiping reveals secrets. Therefore, do not associate with one who speaks foolishly, right? So it's gossip for sure, but it's not just about gossip. What are the topics of conversation, right? What are you talking about? Thinking about this, George is a young man, so thinking about the fellows talking about sports or pretty girls or, school or early jobs and all that kind of stuff. Those are great things to talk about. But are they the highest level of things you could be talking about, right? Can you not seek something deeper, heavier, bigger, right? So certainly, if someone is gossiping or speaking ill or is just one of those toxic personalities, you probably need to not develop or cultivate that relationship. When you start to grow and advance and you get to somebody who is, just a fellow dude. Look, I like talking about sports and pretty girls and jobs and school and all that kind of stuff too. Don't get me wrong. But at some point, I need something more. And so when you graduate from the gossipy types, the toxic types to the bro, then can you graduate from the bro to those who push you? We'll see this in a moment, to be better people who are, what we say in our work, fighting every day about ideas. All right, I'm going to quote this one. I think I'll get close to it. It's attributed to the former First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, and I'll butcher it, but you'll get the idea. Small minds talk about people. Good minds talk about events. Great minds talk about ideas. And when I first heard that, I thought, holy cow, that's fabulous. Like, why am I going to talk about other people? Like, does it make me feel good to see someone else suffering or to vent my wrath upon them because they did or said something I didn't like? Then I become a gossip, right? Don't associate with them, says the book of Proverbs. It's not of any value other than to stroke my own ego. But if I want to grow and I want to get better, and I want to find my unique ability to become like an amazing human being, at least to the best of my ability, I got to go past that gossip. I got to go past even talking about specific events and start wrestling with ideas and thought and think. It's always nice to have somebody to do that with. I'm very blessed on our Warrior Saints team. Not only do I have Greg, but we have a great team here in our office and our staff that we do that weekly, sometimes daily. We just sit in my office and we fight about ideas. So I would encourage you, leave that toxic behind. Don't cultivate it. I don't care if you feel guilty. Get over yourself. It's time to be a little crucifixional and move on. The other verse I want to throw at you to bolster this point comes to us from Ephesians chapter 5. And we were high on Ephesians. In our Understanding the Bible series that we put out on our Warrior Saints platform, we just finished Ephesians. It's going to editing tomorrow, and it'll be up there soon. So we're really hot on Ephesians. It's Paul's summa. It's the compendium of all of St. Paul's thoughts. In chapter 5, we hear, and this is verse 6 and 7, "Let no one deceive you with empty words, for it is because of these things that the wrath of God comes upon the sons of disobedience. Therefore, do not associate with them." Right? Now, empty words, Paul is talking about all kinds of different things, but I think that goes across the gamut of thought, right? Like, is what you're talking about of value, right? Now, look, what you're talking about, when it becomes of value, you will find that there's a smaller gene pool of people who want to talk about that, right? I love scripture. That's what I love. That's all I want to talk about. I don't really want to talk about the Lakers. I don't even watch the games anymore as much as I love them, right? But there are more people who want to talk about the Lakers than they want to talk about Ciroc. You know what I mean? Like my circle of influence has become a lot smaller, right? The group of people that I can have those conversations with definitely dwindles because there are less people who are interested in what I'm interested in these deeper ideas. Do you understand that? So in some sense, you got to be prepared that as you cultivate the proper relationships, it gets a little bit lonely or a little bit more difficult to find the right people to spend time with. I do not avoid my friends and acquaintances who talk about sports. I love them. And we carve out time for that. We dedicate time for that. But the bulk of my time is to leave behind, I'm trying hard to leave behind those things that don't produce any value, those things that don't help me any to grow and to become better. Because look, I don't want to be tomorrow who I am today. I want to be better. Now, God will bless that or not. That's up to him. But I'm putting in my effort and I'm doing my part. So if the first step is to leave behind all of that, like we started with the gossipy toxicity, and level up from that to bros, and from bros and our girlfriends into like for real hardcore conversations, well, then what do I do? Okay, that's the second step I want to give you is that, and I always say like this, reach up. What I mean by that, what I mean by reach up, is that you don't ever want to be the smartest guy, the smartest girl in the room. In fact, you should be the dumbest. Is that a harsh word?
No, it works.
It works. He says it works. It works. My point is not to make fun of anybody, but I don't ever like going into a room where I'm the smartest guy or the most successful guy. I want to be surrounded by men and women who are above me so I can reach up. And by doing this, I give myself an opportunity to learn, to stretch, to think. Those ideas that we're fighting about, here's a new arena to fight about those ideas. Do you understand what I'm saying here? There are some times where I will walk into the room and be the most knowledgeable on whatever subject, right? Likewise, as you walk into rooms, you will definitely on many occasions be the most, schooled, the most knowledgeable, the strongest, smartest, oldest, wisest, whatever you want to say. Of course that happens. So it's not like you can't, that you can avoid that. What I am saying is that you have to make an effort when developing these friendships and these relationships to cultivate them, is to find someone who can be a mentor, someone who can be ahead of you, someone who can be who's going to push you or even help pull you along as you are growing and moving forward. There's that great story. I forgot the name of the man, but it was that movie that Leonardo DiCaprio was in, Catch Me If You Can. And it was like the great story about a con man who, like, he posed as an airline pilot. He posed as like all these things. But one of the things he did was he went to college and he was a sociology professor. And he taught for the semester, right? And nobody figured out this dude was not like a sociology professor. And when they caught him, they asked, like, how'd you even do that? He said, it's easy. All I have to do is be one chapter ahead of my students, right? So like he just kept ahead of them. So every time he would go to class, they were learning what he'd learned yesterday and he was pulling them along. My point in telling that fun story is to say this. Hopefully you find someone who's not a con man or a con woman, but who's way down the line of where you want to go, right? So what you're doing when you reach up is the water you're pouring into your bucket it's stronger, it's wiser, it's cleaner, it's clearer. Nobody's perfect, but you're putting good water in there. So when you, the sponge, in these relationships enter into that water, you are then absorbing someone who is ahead of you, at least one chapter, if not 1,000 chapters ahead in life, so you can learn. And as you wrestle with these ideas and you fight together in these discussions and these conversations, you're going to find yourself, sitting around the fire with someone who is wiser and gone through it. I love this saying. I don't know where I saw it, but it said, always sit around the fire with warriors. The conversation is different, right? Like, I love it because it's saying, like, you don't sit with the softies, right? They're just talking about sports. Sit with the warriors who have done battle with life. They're going to offer you something, right? Now, here's the last part about it. And we don't have a screen pop because it just came into my head. Once you have removed the toxicity from your life, you have started to reach up and surround yourself with people who are going to stretch you and pull you. You then find yourself having the obligation, but also the enjoyment to give back so that you become, in some sense, in the deliberate sense, the intentional sense, the best guy or best girl in the room so you can share with someone who's right behind you on the path. Does that make sense? So once you are growing and developing, you really have an obligation, a duty, a responsibility to give back to the world, right? To give back to those who are behind you. Now imagine if we were to do this. I mean, I think about this kind of stuff just in my own life, and we talk about these things all the time. The things that I've been blessed with, the people that have helped guide me and, led me along in my own journey and my own growth, my own maturity, getting betterness, whatever you want to say. I owe them a great duty, I owe them not a great duty, a great amount, whatever. I owe them because they've done good for me. And there's nothing they want from me. So instead, I've decided to do my best to take what they gave me, what I've learned, what I've distilled in my own mind, and pass that back to the world, to you, our warrior saints, to the online community, to my community here. I mean, I'm trying to take that and give it back, right? And what happens with that is that we've created that stuff. I mean, like the stuff we have at warriorsaints.org, our understanding the Bible and the battle plan for life on how to live it. I mean, that's years. It's a culmination of years of study and thinking differently. Like it's not something like I'm not telling you how to get better. I'm telling you how to be totally different, right? Like it's this brand new opportunity on living life in a crucifixional manner. And it works, and it's like, wow. And so we give it back to the world. We come into this studio for hours and hours, day after day, and grind and give 100% because we've been blessed, Greg and I, so much with great mentors and leaders and spiritual fathers and spiritual mothers and our own families, our own parents. I mean, we've been blessed so much. We feel compelled and actually kind of excited about taking whatever we've got and giving it back to you. So, George, great question. Anybody else has any other questions for tomorrow or Friday? Don't be shy. Put them in the comments wherever you find them, and we'll give it a shot. Love you, beautiful people. Hope this was in some sense helpful. We'll be back tomorrow as always. Until then, keep walking on the way of the warrior saint.